Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome to the stage, Milo Edwards! Hello! How are we doing, Islington? Are we well? Welcome, welcome. This is a show called Voicemail. My name is Milo Edwards. This show is about time, and we've only got an hour, so we should probably crack on, okay? Look, time, first and foremost, is a measurement of ourselves, and I am one of ourselves, so the best way to start is with a history of me. With that in mind, my father was born into poverty in 1943 in Tottenham. He worked very hard and provided the kind of socio-economic platform with the aid of which I was able to attend Cambridge University and become a stand-up comedian so that my children can be born into poverty in Tottenham. Yes, there is some degree of privilege, but we are doing our best to get rid of it before the next generation. In my family, there may be some degree of cultural capital, but there will be no actual capital. My children might get to grow up reading things like Dostoevsky, but I can promise them that they will go to a school where that is considered gay. Because if you don't know this, in Britain there are two types of schools. There are the types of schools where reading things is gay, and there are the types of schools where it's all boys and you're all wanking each other off, but it's not gay. And we'll actually never be speaking of it again. Not until we lock eyes across a cabinet meeting. Can be pretty awkward the morning after a reshuffle, can't it? Raising your eyes from your brief folder to realise that you haven't seen that particular gaze since the last time, which was across a soggy Jacob's Table water. Look, if that's where the line is, it's going to be a hard next 55 minutes. This is easing you in. I went to the first type of school. I did, however, go to the second type of university. So I'm qualified to comment on this country. For a while, what this gave me was a complex about posh women. In order to understand this, we need to cast our minds back to 2019, when I was to some extent a different man. At this time, I was going out with a very posh girl, and without wishing to exaggerate, she would regularly say things which would shake me to the core of my being. So, on one such occasion, we're discussing our sexual histories. She's doing most of the talking. Now, she goes to me, casual like, she goes, "Yeah, well, you've had sex with a guy." Now, I'm not bisexual, nothing wrong with that, but I'm like, no. And then she goes, "Yeah, but you must have at least sucked a guy's dick." And I'm, as though I'm going to be like, "Oh, wait, yes, of course, I didn't realise." Oh, if we're including sucking dicks, let me just get a tally chart out. No, I haven't done that, but what makes you think that I must definitely have done, right? I'm bought in at this point. And then she said to me the most interesting thing anyone has ever said to me, bar none, which was verbatim, "Well, I didn't think you'd have done it for fun, more just like out of politeness." That's worse. Yes, I'm not gay, I'm just weak of will. My sexual orientation is obliging. No after you, sir, I insist. Look, perhaps I'm not as polite as I thought I was. Right, colour me discourteous for a moment. But I'm struggling to imagine an etiquette scenario of such Byzantine fucking complexity that the only polite way out is to suck another man's penis. That is a nuclear option, surely. Don't remember reading that in the Debrett's Guide, right? It's not the first thing you'd go to after reversing into someone in the Waitrose car park, is it? You would get some looks doing that by the trolley bay, I can tell you. However, look, I take this job seriously, so I attempted to come up with a scenario. This is admittedly a bit niche, so bear with me. Imagine you're in a big group trekking across the desert somewhere on the Arabian Peninsula. I did warn you. One of the local Bedouin tribesmen invites you all into his hut for tea. They're a very hospitable people. You're trooping in there, and he's pouring everyone tea, whereupon you become aware that everyone apart from you is sucking the guy's dick. Naturally, you inquire, what's going on here, chaps? And then they're like... Well, you see, the thing is, it is his house. And in the Bedouin culture, a very ancient nomadic culture, they very much operate on a his house, his rules basis. That's of an almost religious significance to them. And so right now you are offending him, and what's more, not only on your own behalf, but on behalf of everyone else here. So, if you wouldn't mind. Now, in that scenario, I would do it, but that is not strictly politeness, that's more being a team player. Which is a more worthy emotion, right? I couldn't suck a dick out of politeness. Things I do out of politeness is like hold a door for someone, listen to a long, boring story, live with a woman I didn't love for 6 months, right? Normal stuff. Always some controversy in the room on that one. Not only have you all done it, some of you are doing it right now. This is Britain, let's not kid ourselves. No, I couldn't suck a dick out of politeness. However, I'll tell you this for free right now. I don't know what this says about me. I couldn't suck a dick out of politeness, but if push came to shove, like if it came down to it, I could absolutely suck one out of spite. Not, and this is quite important, right? Not to spite the person whose dick I was sucking, to spite some kind of third party in this imagined scenario, presumably. Because if you're sucking someone's dick to spite them specifically, what's happened there is you have been hoodwinked. You've fallen for the oldest trick in the book, I'm afraid. There's not really any coming back from that. We broke up not long after that discussion. I think she thought it would have been much more normal just to have gone no and leave it there, but that's not the type of person I am, and she should have known that, right? And the more I got into writing the show, I thought to myself, well, what is normality really? You know, normality, it's a concept you inherit from your parents, right? Your parents are your parameter for what's normal, and if you've got weird parents, you are fucked. That's how that works, right? Like, the Fritzl kids think everyone grew up in a basement. Do you understand? Like, those are their horizons. I am going to warn you now, there is one more Fritzl joke in the show. It's no worse than that, but you just should be aware. And my parents, as a barometer of normality, are quite tricky, right? Because they're very different from one another. For example, if my mum sends me a text that says, call me, a devastating event has occurred, nuclear missiles are in the air, seek shelter. If my father sends me a text that says, call me, the skybox is broken. Like, it's not even broken, he's unplugged it. Do you understand? And in the course of this, I worked out that my father is pretty much the only person who has ever left me a voicemail. And my father leaves voicemails the way Jack Bauer leaves voicemails. Here's an example of a voicemail I once received from my father, right? I missed a call, 5 minutes later I pick up this voicemail. Milo, call me as soon as you get this. I need an urgent call, please. Call me immediately. So I phoned him, right? I phoned him, I'm like, Dad, what's happened? What's going on? And he goes, would you mind taking my car in for a service next week? What exactly was going on at Hills Toyota Bishop Stortford that warranted that degree of urgency exactly? Were they being shelled? Were they being overrun by the Taliban? Like, Dave's lost his leg, this is no time to fuck around about the Prius, Keith. What time is he coming in and does he want a courtesy car? And it just made me think, you know, leaving voicemails, it's really such a dad art form. Like, when that generation of dads dies out, will the voicemail go with them? Or will it stick around as a hipster thing like vinyl records? Like, you know, will there be a situation where, like, in 2050, all of the hottest mumble rap is recorded by 19-year-olds with face tattoos directly onto an answering machine? Focusing primarily on the length of the queue at Halfords. Because it's difficult to acknowledge, I think, as a youngish person, which I still just about am, that something you're doing right now will one day be considered dad shit. Because it wasn't dad shit when they started doing it, it was just guy shit. It became dad shit over time. That's how time works. That's what Stephen Hawking wrote that book about. Most people want to have kids. Very few people want to be considered a dad in the sense of the term, right? No one wants to be the guy driving his kid and his kid's friends to the cinema going, the reason why you can't appreciate the music of Status Quo is because the weed now is too strong. But that is the man we must all become. And that goes for the women as well, right? Because have you ever been on TikTok? Okay, if you're not familiar with TikTok, it's an app for teenagers and people who are just dabbling in paedophilia. You know, dilettante pedos. They're, you know the ones, they're not really doing anything major. They're kind of like, look, she's 14, she's dancing, but she's got her clothes on, officer. You can't touch me for that, right? Those guys, and the most maligned group of all, millennial content creators. Now, you can go on TikTok and you can receive the most potent memento mori known to man, because you can go on TikTok right now after the show and you can watch a 14-year-old refer to the Arctic Monkeys as classic rock. TikTok indeed. The relentless march of time comes for us all, doesn't it? I bet you look good on the dance floor, or at least perchance you once did. Before the ravages of time and age laid waste to you, as they have done with the rest of your generation. An Ozymandias statue in top man skinny jeans. The only way to live in the real world is to accept that you are already a dad. And I try to live in the real world. It's not always easy because I do live in Britain. Britain is a lot like Scientology, okay? Like, there are secrets. For example, until the age of 18, no one in this country is permitted to know that the empire was bad. Like, you can vape, but you can't know that. Blue razz it up, my friend, but don't be looking into that shit. British history teachers talk about the empire as though it were the Oxfam Railway Construction Department. Yeah, they went over there, they built some railways, don't fucking worry about the details. Henry VIII, Brunel, Hitler, off you pop. Why dwell on the past? You've got a glittering career in regional estate agency ahead of you. They're liverying that Mini Cooper for you right now. There is no need to consider the blood upon which it is wrought. And as a result, we have this very distant relationship with our own history, which I think is a shame, because there are good bits of British history, right? Like, I've got a favourite bit of British history. No one understands what's good about it, okay? My favourite bit of British history is Dunkirk. Here is what fucking whips about Dunkirk. What was, on paper at the time, the greatest empire history had ever known, fucked it so badly. They had to go cap in hand to the working people of their own country and go, listen up, chaps, spot a bother. Do you remember the lads? Now, as you may recall, we recently borrowed the lads and took them on a little trip to give Jerry a bit of a thrashing. There have been some teething problems with that. Jerry, not quite as compliant as we had hoped. The upshot of it is, the lads are on a beach. Now, I know that sounds good. But it's not a good beach. You see, you're picturing pebbly, cold. It's more bomby, if I had to put it. And so, of course, we need to get the lads off of the beach forthwith, as I'm sure you'll agree. And in order to do that, we're going to need a lot of boats. And you're probably thinking, what about the famous British Navy? And I will level with you, don't get me started on the fucking Navy! The Navy is not in play. So, we were just wondering if you chaps wouldn't mind stopping what you're doing and popping over and getting the lads. And they went and got the lads. Not because it was their job, but because no other fucker was going to do it. And that is dad shit. Turning up at Dunkirk, like, did you and your friends have a nice time? If you're going to be sick, do it over the side, all right? You've got to come to terms with history. You've got to come to terms with your own place in it, right? Like, I'm 30 now, which I think is a difficult age. I know difficult age is normally what people say about, like, 2 or 13, okay? But those are not difficult ages. Those are ages where you are a dickhead. That's different. 30 is a liminal age, right? I am too young to escape the eventual climate apocalypse. I am too old to date Prince Andrew. Like, where do I... Prince Andrew gets a bad rap, doesn't he? I mean, I'm not going to defend him. I haven't gathered you here for that purpose. That would be a very odd and expensive thing to have done. Although it probably would have subsidised the filming costs somewhat. But... no, I do just think that whilst there are many extremely valid criticisms of Prince Andrew, some of the ones that were going around were a bit weird. Like, because you heard people saying, Prince Andrew, what is the point of him? You know, we pay for him. Like, what is the value of Prince Andrew to the British taxpayer? And I think that's a very myopic view because, right, you know, in big 2024, with the loss of Jimmy Savile, Prince Andrew is an increasingly important figurehead for the paedophile community. He is nonce laureate, if you will. The Pope of the paedophile religion. Which I guess, if you're being technical, is just the Pope. But... yeah, there we go. Applause break for the Catholic Church sexual abuse skier. Topical, Edwards, topical. Look, I'm 30, as I was saying. The point is, right, I've reached this point in my life, and I feel as though the only bankable CV achievement I have is the university I went to, and if I bring that up, I sound like a cunt, according to some comedy reviewers. So I just want to exercise the sort of Oxbridge demons in the air right now. I will, for your benefit, give you the only definition of Oxbridge you will ever need, right? Oxford and Cambridge are a castle you get to go to as a reward for being bullied at school. That's what that is. You turn up and then you're safe. That's the deal, right? This is not a sympathy bit, right? I was not the most bullied kid at school. I have always been fundamentally quite a belligerent person. Can you imagine a child with my exact personality? No, but against the odds it fucking happened. Let me tell you, it did not go down well. However, there were easier kids to bully. You know the kids who sort of know they should be bullied? Okay, there was a kid at my school called and that is his real name. And at some point in the first week of year 7, one of the school bullies took him aside and asked him what he'd done at the weekend, and he said, "Top Gear," in that voice. And people said, "Top Gear," at for 7 years. Because was a fucking pussy. And my mother didn't raise no fucking pussies, okay? Here's the thing about my mother. You know, sometimes when you're an adult, you'll remember something a bit fucked up that one of your parents said to you when you were a kid, and then you bring it up with them, and then they're like, "I never said that," right? Well, my mother is like, "Yeah, I said that. Do you need reminding?" One such occasion, I was about 7 years old. I came home from school, I was upset because I'd been bullied at school, right? My mother takes me to one side, and she goes to me, "Milo, you should never start a fight at school. We don't believe in that in this household. But you can absolutely fucking finish one." My mum is a 5'1" retired accountant, and she's the scariest person I've ever met in my life. The only individual genuinely qualified to cash checks and snap necks. It's a limited Venn diagram overlap. And she has, for better or for worse, imbued me with this kind of stoicism, which is not always useful. Sometimes it wigs people out, right? Like, okay, during the big lockdown in 2020, my girlfriend at the time, dick sucking, we recall, right? She broke up with me, and she was like, "I want to break up," and I was like, "Okay, fine." I was just like fine with it. I don't know why. Like, I shouldn't have been, right? It was a very serious relationship. Like, we were going to buy a house together. I mean, she was going to pay for it, but still. I think we can all agree that is a big commitment for her dad to make, and I respect him for it. That is dad shit. Buying a house for your daughter's idiot comedian boyfriend whom you resent, and saying no more about it but quietly upping your blood pressure medication. That is our culture, and I will have it respected. So she goes, "I want to break up." I go, "Okay, fine." And I would describe her reaction as offended. Because she was expecting me to be like shocked or overwrought or something. Right, what you need to know about this girl is she was hot and mean, right? When a girl like that breaks up with me, I am not surprised. I'm surprised she was going out with me in the first place, sure, but at this point we're well into eventualities I'm psychologically prepared for. I've got a go bag for this shit. I'm like James fucking Bond. I've got a briefcase full of money, passports and directions to my mum's house, right? She didn't get that. But the thing is, I was prepared because I have a type, right? Or at least I did at the time. The type of women that I used to like to date was, you know, sometimes when you watch the news and they'll have like a fun bit at the end of the news where it's about a guy who's got like a live polar bear in his back garden as a pet. And then they interview the guy and he's like, look, I know it sounds weird, but that bear loves me. I've raised that bear since it was a cub. Me and that bear have a bond and that bear would never harm me. And then they like smash cut to a wild animal expert who's like, that bear is going to kill that man. You need to intervene. That man is going to be food. This is a mental health emergency. Do something. Why is this on live television? That was the type of women I used to like to date, right? Now, there is always a warning sign. In her case, it was that she offhandedly told me a story about an argument she'd had with her previous boyfriend because he had lost the keys to her apartment, which is annoying, sure. In the course of this argument, she said to him, let's face it, Pete, I've had boyfriends before you and I'll have boyfriends after you. Woo! Okay, let's fucking go. Can you imagine how that has changed that man's psychological relationship with keys? He can't even look at a key without getting acid flashbacks from Vietnam. That guy's got a thumbprint entry system on his front door. People think he's a lunatic. And after that relationship broke down, I had to sort of come to terms with the fact that I did have a pattern of being into horrible women. Now, look, women aren't horrible. That's not the point of the bit, okay? If they're much nicer than men, statistics are available. There's some chilling stuff about men on the ONS. Google it later, right? The point was, at the time, I was kind of into the horrible ones. Now, before you try and do any pop psychology shit on me, my mum is not horrible, she's scary. Those are two different things. This is not a show about how I want to fuck my mum. It's my show, I get to decide what it's about. Write to your fucking MP, I don't care, right? But look, the reason why I was into horrible women is because fundamentally it's showing off, right? Anyone can date a woman who likes them, pussy. Try dating a woman who hates your guts like a real bloke. Because you see those men, don't you, who are like, I can bench 95 kilos. Okay, buddy, let's see how strong you are when she refuses to attend an important funeral in your family because she's busy. I'm lifting emotional weights in the mind gym, bucko. Get on my level. I am more prepared for the coming horrors. Look, I don't want you to get the wrong impression. I'm a big fan of women. Here is the best explanation of why I'm a feminist. Look, I think we can all agree, due to the career path I have chosen and the general way that things are going, my best chance of living out the twilight years of human civilization in some degree of relative comfort is obviously to marry a wealthy woman. Bearing that in mind, it is of vital importance that women continue to be emancipated at, if anything, an ever-increasing rate. We cannot afford for there to be a shortage of wealthy women. There needs to be such an oversupply, such a glut of pecunious ladies that the competition is low enough that at least some of them are prepared to give this a go. Those are my politics, take it or leave it. Because you meet men, and I still meet men to this day, who say, I would never date a woman who earns more money than me. And it's a very interesting point, to which my response is, wrong, it's sick. You should fucking try it, mate. Dating someone who earns more money than you is like you earn more money, but you don't have to do anything. Do you know they can't tax you on money earned by someone else? I've got a scheme going, right? My ex was a lawyer in a year where I earned £11,000, which is lower than the threshold at which you pay income tax in this country. Like, I wasn't allowed in the Taxpayers Alliance. I had to be in Fathers for Justice. Like, when they talk about taxpayer-funded wars, I'm like, not me, motherfucker, I'm divested. There's no blood on my hands. Yeah, and in that year, we went on 3 holidays. That is sick, right? Here is my sincere advice to you. If you're dating someone who earns less money than you, dump them. Have a little self-respect. We can all trade up in the world. Look, we can't do socialism on the macro scale. We've learned that, but we can do it on the micro scale. I can redistribute posh women's parents' money to me a bit. I'm the Lenin of that shit, right? But yeah, it was a weird time, right? Because that relationship ended, and then shortly after that, I turned 29. And like 30's kind of coming up on you, and you're like, where am I going in life? And it was at that point that I went on a pornographic website, as we all do in times of trouble, right? And there was an ad, and the ad said, 30-year-old MILF. And I thought, surely fucking not. I can't be coming up on this now. Not another milestone. Look, I think we can all agree housing and economic insecurity has extended adolescence so far into our 20s, we need to seriously discuss raising the age at which you can be considered a MILF. You cannot be interning at a media startup and living in your parents' attic and a MILF. That doesn't make any sense. I refuse to be like, my name's Milo Edwards, I'm 30 and I'm into MILFs, by which I mean I fuck women my own age. No. I politely decline. And we can redefine MILF, because MILF is actually a socio-economic category more than anything else, right? You don't really need to be a mother to be one. What you need to be is a woman of a certain age with a husband wealthy enough to regularly go away on business trips. That is the soul of the MILF. What Stacey's mum had going on was not several minimum wage jobs, was it? She wasn't rushing from a shift at an Amazon warehouse to pick up a Deliveroo order. It's not the kind of woman she was. She was a woman of leisure. That's how she had the time and energy to fuck younger men. This isn't to say that working class women of a certain age can't be attractive. It's just to say they don't have the economic access to the freedom necessary for MILFdom, which is an axis of social injustice. I'm not a politician. I don't create these problems. I just diagnose them. That's down to you. But it's no fun and games for people of our generation, right? Because in this country, boomers and Gen X have got such a death grip on the housing stock that until they die and we inherit, we can't become MILFs. We're stuck as hot teens. Getting fucked in dryers by our stepfather potentially well into our 50s. Yes, Joseph Fritzl's greatest crime was he was ahead of his time. He foresaw the true consequences of the 2008 financial crash better than most central bankers did. A man in his mid-70s with adult children living in his basement, soon to be the reality for most people, unfortunately. Because international private equity speculation on housing markets across the Western world is keeping the ages of MILFs artificially high. And our government has no plan of what they're going to do about this. Or about caring for the ageing GILF population in retirement. This is a ticking time bomb. Due to generational inequality, MILFs can become GILFs at the usual rate, but there are no hot teens becoming MILFs to replace them, creating this kind of squeezed middle situation. There will be a MILF supply crisis. Friends' sons will go unfucked. And then we'll see how resilient the public are, won't we? The old world is dying, the new world struggles to be born. We live in a time of change, I believe that, sincerely. It's a time of change for me. For example, I no longer receive voicemail messages because my father is dead. Okay, we need to get over this information as quickly as possible. We have the camera crew for a limited time. Look, I think the easiest way to do this is, everyone in the room, you are in one of two categories. We've got dead dad, and we've got dad yet to die. Okay? Weirdly, the dead dad group, more cheerful. Interesting. Don't know what your relationship with your father was like. Look, now, I am young for the former category, but I'm not the youngest, right? I am precocious. I'm an early adopter. Eventually, the rest of you will get on our level. Is this coming as a shock to you? This is just how mortality works. Like, I'm not sure I've got time to cover it in any more detail. Okay, look, the thing about my dad is, he died. He did not, in my view, pass away. I've got an issue with this euphemism. Okay, a while ago, I was listening to the radio, right, and the DJ, in a sort of interstitial bit, said, do you know, it's been 42 years to the day since John Lennon, sadly, passed away. Now, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the exact circumstances under which John Lennon could be said to have passed away. But here's something we can all agree on, right? I fucking hate it. Like, it winds me up. It grinds my gears when I leave my apartment and a man shoots me with a gun, causing me to pass away. What an annoying Wednesday. Park life. Okay, who exactly do they think they're being polite to there? Is it John Lennon? Because, believe me, if I was murdered to death with a gun, and people went around saying I'd passed away like I shat myself to death on the toilet at Burger King, I would be livid. That being shot in the street by a random that's rock and roll, that's metal. Let him have it, right? Not only are they being rude to John Lennon, they're also being rude to Mark Chapman. Because that's the only thing he ever did. His Wikipedia page is just that, isn't it? He never had a Christmas single. Certainly not after that. Really burned his bridges with the music industry there, old Chapman. Some people are getting a little bit more out of this joke because they know that Mark Chapman is the name of the man who murdered John Lennon. I don't want you to feel bad, because what I've learned in the course of touring this show is Mark Chapman is still alive, he's still in prison 43 years later for the murder of John Lennon, and you know what? Most people don't know who the fuck he is. What a waste of time. Should have murdered someone more important, like Reagan. Hinckley only half did it, and he's doing guitar tours. It's shit for Mark Chapman to know that he is of less relevance to the average comedy-going punter than Peter Andre. And has arguably done less to damage popular music. But the thing is, when you've got a dead dad, it does force you to sort of consider your own mortality. Like, I do sometimes think, like, if I died right now, what would happen? I mean, other than it creating a very awkward situation for all of... Like, how long would you wait before concluding that it's definitely not a bit? And like going and getting one of the bar staff, and then they'd sort of come down here, wouldn't they, with a mop or something? I mean, it'd be a whole production, right? More what I mean is, if I died approximately now, like, what would they say about me? Like, what would my headstone say? Here lies Milo Edwards. He had 2 podcasts. Don't clap that, that's not good. I don't know if you know this, but podcasts is a lot like golf. The aim is 0. 2 is my handicap. Every podcast you have is a mistake you have made somewhere along the line. Much like mortal sins in Catholicism, your job is to absolve yourself of your podcast before the hour of your death. Time is knocking on. Like, right, I'm 30. I really thought by this stage in my life, my career would be coming together faster than my body is falling apart. That has not proven to be the case. Okay, a while ago, one of my eyes went weird. I believe that's the technical term, right? And it's like, an eye, that's not good, because I've only got 2, and I don't know about you, I use them a lot. Like, I love looking at stuff. I adore a glance. I'm one of life's real lookers. Shoot me, right? Like, if it were a finger, I've got 10 of the cunts, you know what I mean? We can sin bin a pinky, I'm not asked. But an eye, that's not good. So I went on the NHS website, right? I put all of my symptoms into their little hypochondria app thing. And it spat out a condition. And then underneath the condition, there was a description of next steps and so on. And here is what it genuinely said. That's how your eye is now. And it's nothing to worry about. Motherfucker! How about I will be the judge? Of course you're not worried, Denise. You don't have to look through it. I do, but you know, the NHS is very under-resourced, and the people there, they do work very hard. So I do kind of understand, as frustrating as it is, why their current position on this is, do you think we at the NHS have time for every bit of your body that isn't working quite as you would like? We do not. We've been understaffed for years. One of the tea ladies is made of straw. Come back when your eye has fallen out and we will give you a paracetamol. And you get no sympathy, you know. I'm like, I think my body's falling apart, and people say to me, Milo, what are you worried about? You're only 30 years old. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm fucking worried about. It's not going to get any better, is it? Being alive is a degenerative condition. No one told me when I was 18 years old that with every passing year of my life, shitting would get harder. That's been the only consistent truth of my adult existence. You could set your fucking watch by that. If we extrapolate from the current trend, by 2030, every shit I take will be like the Battle of fucking Stalingrad. No one is talking about this. I am in managed decline. I'm using the perception of my outsized cultural influence to cover for my growing economic and strategic irrelevance. I am Britain. This country will never have a greater talisman than me, whether they accept it or not. Because Britain is a lot like the popular 1999 film The Matrix. At a certain point, you get to take the pill and you find out that Britain isn't real. Where it differs, however, from the popular 1999 film The Matrix is that when you take the pill and you find out that Britain isn't real, you don't get to go anywhere else. You just have to stay in Britain, but now you're in on the joke. Which is worse. Because do you ever think that they don't realise we can remember things? I'm not talking about stuff that happened like 40 years ago, like Mark Chapman, right? I'm talking about stuff that happened like 30 seconds ago. Do you ever watch the news and there'll be like 2 news items back to back, and the first one will be like, we're going to decarbonise the economy by 2050. Yeah. And then the second news item will be like, if we don't decarbonise the economy by 2040, we will all be dead. Excuse me, Fiona Bruce, I have a question about the numbers. Just before we move on, to my untrained eye, those 2 numbers would appear to be the wrong way around. Is that an editorial oversight, or are we all fucked? We're all fucked. Look, in fairness to the British government, I hate to do this, but in fairness to them, if everyone dies, that will decarbonise the fuck out of the economy. They might just meet the target. It's an avant-garde strategy, to be sure. Could have some drawbacks, but we might just slide under the fucking Kyoto Protocol there. Let them cook, that's what I say. Because it's pointless, isn't it, to blame the government for climate change. It's like blaming a dog for eating its own shit. What did you expect? You ever see those people who are like, we're partnering with Shell to end climate change? Have you been hit on the head? Are you having an aneurysm? What's going on? What's happened? You were able to form sentences earlier and now you've been hit on the head with a cinder block. What's going on? Right, but you got to blame someone, right, to make yourself feel better. Here's my suggestion to you. Take it for free, take it away from you. Who I blame? Environmentalists. Look, if environmentalists hadn't spent the last 50 years making the endeavour of caring about the future existence of all human life on Earth the preserve of the most raving fucking lunatics imaginable, maybe something would have been done about it. They have salted the Earth. Right? If at this point you as a reasonably normal right-thinking person put your hand up and say, if it's still on the table actually, I wasn't paying attention earlier but I would quite like not to be cooked to death, you might as well be wearing sandals made out of fucking beans, mate. Why don't you go over there with the rest of those lentil-eating pricks? We're enjoying the fire over here. Environmentalists have done for the environment what Fathers for Justice have done for working class men disadvantaged by the family court system. Absolutely fucking nothing. Quick sidebar on Fathers for Justice, because it was a long time ago and in Britain, okay? Look, Fathers for Justice, it's Britain, it's the 2000s. You've lost access to your kids at family court. Are you going to appeal? No, you're mental. What you're going to do is you and a bunch of your mates are going to dress up as superheroes, hang off a crane in central London and unfurl a banner that says, "Give me the kids back, Sandra, you bitch." It wasn't a strategy that worked, but by God, it got on the news. Because, you know, I'm sure there are working class men who are disadvantaged by the family court system, right? But you know what didn't help was a fucking misogynist hanging off a Big Ben dressed as Aquaman, did it, David? People took one look at David and they went, oh, I see, they're all cunts. I'm glad they don't get to see their kids, actually. That seems like a bad vibe to have around a child. This is what the environmentalists have done, right? I am old enough to remember, as some of you may be, right, when environmentalists were campaigning against high-speed electric rail of the kind that's agreed by more or less every climate expert to be a key component of solving the climate crisis so we don't all fucking die, right? Now, the reason why I am old enough to remember this is not because of my wizened years. It is, in fact, because it's fucking now!
They're like, oh, we can't build the high-speed electric railway line here. The railway line that's agreed by most experts to be an essential component of solving the climate crisis so we don't all fucking die. Because if we build the railway line here, you see, there's one issue, which is that this heron would have to move.
Right, I don't give a fuck about the fucking heron! It's a bird, they're supposed to move, that's like their thing! If it doesn't move, it's a shit bird and it deserves to die! Have you heard of natural selection? You've been naturally selected out of existence, you long-legged prick! We as a society have progressed past the need for fucking a heron! When was the last time you ran out to the corner shop at midnight for a heron? Fucking never!
Grow up. It's hard on the throat, that bit. The promises of the 90s have not been kept. I grew up in the 90s. The 90s was a very optimistic decade. And forgive me for a moment here, but that has not been borne out by what has followed. Right, recap on the 90s. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. Didn't know Zbigniew Brzezinski was in. Okay. He died at the Pleasance Theatre 40 years ago this very night. They say you can still hear his ghost roaming the walls, arming Islamists in Central Asia. He looks down upon us all from the gardens of Jannah, truly. Right, look. What the fuck was I talking about? Yeah, the promise of the 90s did not be kept, right? The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and the American historian Francis Fukuyama took it upon himself to immediately write a book declaring it the end of history. Look, I don't want to go too far here, but someone should kill that guy. Okay, look, like figuratively, obviously, like not in an actionable way, like not in a way that could get me arrested. Like not in like a Salman Rushdie way. Which I guess would be incompetently, because 45 years they were after that guy, and the most they managed was half doing it once. Terrorism's not what it fucking used to be, is it? I tell you what. Fatwa or no fatwa, if he'd said something about the 6 counties in 1986, the IRA would have smoked him in 3 weeks. And you can bet on that. Look, I just think, if you're going to make a prediction as confident and wrong as end of history, whatever happens is your fault. Like, take it on the chin, mate, right? All of the history since then is squarely on Fukuyama, in my view. Quick recap on that, right? First Chechen War, Fukuyama. Second Chechen War, Fukuyama. Bird flu, Fukuyama. 9/11, Fukuyama. Fair play, everyone gets one. Swine flu, Fukuyama. Michael Barrymore murdering that guy, allegedly, Fukuyama. He's a man with a mixed legacy. He's a product of the 90s. And, you know, we can forgive him because, you know, like most men of that generation, he does not understand that the world that he emerged from no longer exists. You cannot do any of that stuff anymore. And I don't mean saying the N-word, right? When my father was younger than me, he bought a house in North London for like 500 quid. I have got 500 quid. Where is my fucking house? Okay, look, I've got 450 quid. I will get the other 50. I will suck a dick if I have to. Where is my fucking house? And they lie to you, don't they? You know, they say, oh, you could afford a house, just cancel your Netflix, sell a kidney. None of that shit is gonna work, okay? None of it. The only traditionally adult thing I could still do, it's open to me, I'm not dumb enough, but I could do it, is have a kid. Okay, look, that is the booby prize. That's what you do after you've already done all the other stuff to show off how much money you have left. It's not what you do to pretend to have money, that's what leasing a Range Rover is for. Why would I raise a child in a one-bedroom rented apartment? So that someone with my surname will live to see the delights of a tropical Scotland? Oh, Fiona, can you pass the sun cream? These parrots are driving me mental. No. Better to just draw a line under it here, I reckon. Do you reckon working at the suicide hotline's gotten harder? What, am I wrong? Like, not because of the volume of calls, although I'm sure they are understaffed. Because of the content. Right, look, who in the year of our Lord 2024 can take a phone call from a desperate person and say with a straight face, you have so much to live for? That is a lie. That is a filthy lie. Look, let's get down to brass tacks here. The economy's fucked, the climate's fucked, we're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. The people who are killing themselves are right. Look, I wish I was a different comedian. We could all be watching Jack Whitehall, couldn't we? Having a good old laugh about hair. But his tickets were more expensive, so here you are. I wish I was a different person. I wish I was the kind of person who had thoughts like, you know what? There really is a Friends quote for every situation. I'm sure that cunt is happy. Those aren't the kind of thoughts that I have. The kind of thoughts I have are the people who are killing themselves are right, and you know what? At least I get to be correct. I don't want you to worry. This isn't a worrisome bit. Right, obviously I'm not going to kill myself because I am a coward. Oh, don't worry. I would much rather cling to the callow hope that the sea level won't rise quite as far as Hackney Wick than face up to the reality that I'm probably better off having a relatively painless death now than a painful one in 25 years' time in some kind of Chinese-administered climate concentration camp. It's not a sunny thought, but there we are. Returning to the Titanic analogy, you have all missed out on the lifeboats and I am the string quartet. Welcome. I was recently accused of having negative energy. No, it pissed me off because it's like, where are you getting positive energy from? Excuse me for being unlobotomized. Like, what? Okay, look, do you remember when the Olympics was on a few years ago and that German pentathlon coach got done for punching that horse in the head? I was like, I get it. Okay, look, because it was a trained horse. They didn't get it off the street. They weren't like, oh, we're a horse short for the pentathlon. I hope there's a passing Edwardian who takes pity on us. No. It was a trained horse. It knew it was supposed to jump over the fences. It didn't jump over the fences. That horse fucked around and it found out. Never respected anyone more than that woman. She did what needed to be done. The worst part was, there were people who were trying to defend her and they were like, well, she was clearly having a mental health crisis. Now, look, mental health is a worthwhile issue to discuss, but not everything is a mental health crisis. Sometimes it's just a crisis. And you, as an adult, have to resolve that crisis by any means necessary, up to and including punching a horse in its stupid fucking head. A dying breed, women like that. Because do you ever have problems? And sometimes you look at your problems and you go, ah! And then some cunt comes along and says, have you tried mindfulness? Fuck off! So I'm suggesting Savlon to someone who's on fire. What do you mean? Mindfulness. Where's my fucking house? Why don't you get your crystal ball out and meditate on that for me, cunt? Mindfulness. Ridiculous. Look, I just think we've taken things like housing and job security and we've replaced them with an app that gives you breathing exercises. And my radical take is perhaps that's not ideal. I believe it was the Unabomber who said, round of applause for the Unabomber. I tell you what, not many rooms globally where you could do that. Certainly not above ground. I believe it was the Unabomber who said, we create the conditions that make people depressed, and instead of removing those conditions, we give people antidepressant drugs. Very smart guy, the Unabomber. You should check out some of his other work. Rest in power. Now, the Unabomber makes a very good point, which is that if everything's fucked, and there's a guy stood here going, that's fucked, it's not really germane to be like, well, it seems you have an attitude problem. No, he doesn't. That's the attitude that's for that. That's what... That doesn't make any... Like, when people said that suicide was the coward's way out, that was a phenomenal bit of branding, because I think we can all agree it is objectively quite a ballsy move. If suicide was the coward's way out, every fucker would be doing it. Have you met people? Brave is not the word I would typically use under most circumstances. If anything, the coward's way out is becoming a management consultant. What even is that? At least dead is a thing. Yeah. My dad is dead, as I said earlier. And as bizarre fate would have it, the last voicemail message he ever sent me was in fact the one about taking his car in for a service. Now, that is of no particular significance. Like, nothing happened to him at the Toyota garage. Okay, for legal reasons, I have to clarify right now, The good people at Hills Toyota Bishop Stortford did not murder my father. As far as we know. But I thought it would be funny to get that voicemail message and play it during the show for everyone, but in the course of looking for it, I discovered that it had been automatically deleted by my service provider's algorithm, right? Which, goes to show that the power that we've devolved to these algorithms, the things that they do behind our backs, winked into nothingness. That could have been the last recording of that man's voice in existence. My father was born in 1943. He did not have a podcast. Fair play to him, nailed it, right? Could have been the last recording, just deleted like that by a machine, which goes to show that any last trace of our own digital existence will someday be deleted and replaced, probably with some kind of cartoon furry pornography. Anyway, the point is, I was at my dad's funeral the other day. I mean, I'm kidding, it wasn't the other day, it was in 2019, but, it's a comic conceit. Look, I only went because I was invited. I popped along, as you should, right, so I went down there. Now, my dad's funeral, we had something called a civil ceremony, which sounds like a fabulous funeral conducted by two gay vicars, but which is in fact a funeral conducted by a sort of ombudsman. Right, a funeral with no view on the sort of God, no God, how many gods questions, a neutral funeral held by an independent Swiss adjudicator, right? That's what we went for. The reason for that is that my father was an atheist, so my mum thought it would be appropriate, which I do get. The problem is, right, I'm begrudgingly an atheist, but we're no fun. I really think, in a funereal context, a big hat and a bit of incense does help the medicine go down somewhere. Like, no one really wants an atheist funeral. Like, people think it sounds like a good idea, but no one wants a funeral where it's like, and his daughter will be giving the eulogy, and then for balance she'll be debated by Piers Morgan. Like, no one wants that, right? Because funerals are bad enough as it is, right? They're a significant life event arranged at very short notice by some of the most shambolic people available. No one's booking the bereaved for fucking bar mitzvahs, are they? And with good reason. They're organised very short notice. Like, the only event of comparable seriousness in a life is a wedding, and people plan those for months or even years. But apparently if you do that with a funeral, it's rude. And as a result, funerals are quite shit, because when you're planning a funeral, you do have to answer a lot of questions which do seem a bit sarcastic in light of the event. Like, it's quite difficult to be like, "Oh, mother, what flavour vol-au-vent shall we have after we incinerate father?" But you've got to answer that question, because if you don't answer it, I'll tell you what happens. You're at the funeral, he's still dead, and now you're eating a shit vol-au-vent. And it does him no honour to do so. He'd have wanted you to have a good vol-au-vent. It's not some kind of group sacrifice to give him safe passage into the afterlife. One Kerry Katona prawn ring on each eye for the ferryman. No. Have a good vol-au-vent. Put some thought into this, right? And I tell you what, despite it being an atheist funeral, we did have, and I shit you not, Jerusalem and the Lord's Prayer. Because, and this is the honest truth, my mother does not consider either of those two things to be religious. She is the most British woman who has ever lived. Yeah, Jerusalem, I've never listened to the lyrics. It's a banging tune, though. Stick it on. After that, we'll have Shape of You in the Cha-Cha Slide. Get this thing going. Death does force you to become an adult. At a certain point, you and the other adults in your family will be stood around a corpse. By that, I do mean other people over the age of 25. Let's not kid ourselves, right? You're stood around a corpse, and it will occur to you that someone should say something. And you'll be like, one of the adults will take care of this. Fuck, I am one of the adults. Are they looking at me? Let me tell you, there is not a Friends quote for every situation. I have checked. And it's tricky because, I never really thought of my dad as a role model. Not because I didn't like him, not because I didn't respect him, but simply because dads are a background presence, right? Good dad should be, they're there, they're mowing the lawn, listening to status quo, things of that nature, right? You're not thinking about him, what are you thinking about a bloke for? So, when someone dies, though, you're forced to consider them from this external, outside perspective, right? And I was at my dad's funeral. I had all these people coming up to me, telling me amazing stories about my dad, things he'd done for them and so on. And to be honest with you, it got a little bit North Korea. Like, you felt the need to give a bit of BBC pushback, well, Derek, he may have been there for you in your darkest moment, but he could also be quite annoying about the recycling, so let's try and remember the man as he was and not engage in this kind of revisionist hagiography. Just, yeah. People are weird about the dead, I always think this. Like, a lot of people with dead relatives, they say stuff like, I always think of him when there's a rainbow or a shooting star or a waterfall, right? My dad was from Tottenham. When I think of my dad, is when everything's fucked and I hear a voice in my head go, don't be a tart. And that's useful, because at some point you will be stood around a corpse and some people might be tarts, and it's not always the people you think. My mother took my father's lifeless hand and said, I've had such a lovely time with you. And people were tarts, because that is a great review from a harsh critic. That's the woman who described The Godfather as plodding and overlong. It's like a 7 out of 5 from that woman. And it does make you think about time, right? About 2 years ago, I was in a meeting with my mum and some doctors where they told her that she had cancer. Now, this wasn't a total surprise. 2 oncologists did not jump out of a cake, wasn't that sort of a deal. Okay, cancer doctors, they've had it too easy for too long, haven't they? Let's give them a shoeing. No, look, the one thing I will say about cancer doctors is they have a catchphrase which I think is quite funny. Cancer doctors love saying, giving you more time. Now, that's extremely funny because cancer doctors talk to you as though they're introducing you to the concept of the human condition just now. They don't even have a humanities degree. Like, sorry. Is there a consultant philosopher on the ward I could speak to about this? It seems a bit above your pay grade, quack. Why don't you go back to being a body mechanic and I'll let you know if I need any guts shoving back in me later on. If I develop a case of golfer's elbow in my grief, I'll ring the little bell. Okay, mate. Now, there's no such thing as more time. It's ridiculous. Like, you get your time and then you're done. Time comes for us all. The only man who ever seriously tried to put a stop to it was Francis Fukuyama. And look what happened to him. He's very rich. So, the weird thing about this meeting is, it's a meeting about how little time there is left, but it also is extremely long because it's very, very awkward, okay? Picture the scene, right? I'm there with my mum, and then there's like this doctor there, and he's younger than me, like nowhere near a MILF, right? There he is, and he is hating it. Like, he's hating it more than me, and it's my mum, right? He's kind of there, he's like looking at his shoes. He's kind of like looking at my mum, looking at me, back at his shoes. And then he looks up and he goes, so, you got any questions on death, or are you good on that? And then there was a bit of a pause, right? And my mum kind of looks around the room, she looks at him, she looks at me, she looks back to him. And then she turns to me and she goes, Milo, did you remember to call the plumber last week in the end? Because say what you will about that woman, she will not die with a leaking shower tray. Fair play, Susan, everyone's got their red lines, that's one of yours. And I thought to myself, you know what, that is actually a romantic thing, right? If you can be faced with your own mortality and your first thought is about a leaking shower tray, congratulations, you have 0 big-ticket regrets on the table. Fair fucks to the woman, she's played a blinder. She's on her deathbed wrapping up plumbing. Can you imagine such a thing, right? That's not to say no regrets. I do find no regrets a little weird. Do you ever meet those people who are like, I don't have any regrets, all my mistakes made me who I am today. Yep, fucking insane, stay away from me. Like, some mistakes you can learn from, other mistakes I'm like, we could have done without that one, Chief, to be honest with you. I don't think I learned a lot from the time I called the teacher mum in year 4. As was evidenced by the time I called the teacher mum in year 5. Operational lessons were not taken on board. For this reason, my favourite thought experiment is what you would do with a time machine. Because I know my answer, right? I would be going back in time and saving myself from petty personal embarrassment. I would be knocking drinks out of my hand and taking myself home like Prince Harry's bodyguard in 2008. Other people have a more grandiose response to this. The most common stereotypical one, which I'm sure you've all heard, is, well, if I had a time machine, obviously I'd have to go back in time and kill Hitler as a baby. Fucking calm down, Clive, you're not in the SAS, mate. Where's this coming from? You've escalated this fun pub hypothetical imbued with any manner of phantasmagorical possibility to baby murder quite quickly. Everything okay at home, mate? Okay, look, call me a stickler if you will. I just feel as though if you want to stop geopolitical events as complex as World War II and the Holocaust, it might take a little bit more than murdering a baby. Look, I get it. It's like that old saying, isn't it? When all you've got is a big hammer, everything looks like a baby. I understand. But if you actually want to stop World War II, you've got to go back further in time, haven't you? You've got to work your way up the greasy pole of the British diplomatic service, find yourself in a position of influence at the signing of the Treaty of Versailles so as to ameliorate the serious political, economic and military sanctions placed on Weimar Germany, which ultimately laid the groundwork for Hitler's rise to power. That's not as fun of a fantasy. You just wanted to shoot a baby. No one's ever had a bureaucratic fantasy, apart from possibly Belgians. Studies have not been conducted. People just aren't interested enough in the mind of the Low Countries, right? It's of no relevance to our progress as a civilization. But look, if that's you, if you want to shoot Hitler, that's fine. You do you. Shoot a baby, punch a horse, fathers for justice, right? I don't care. What is interesting about that as a concept, though, is if you follow that philosophically to its natural conclusion, it does raise some uncomfortable questions. Now, I'm just going to preface this by saying I don't like this any more than you do. Okay, so the time travellers, right? They're going back in time. Like, if you accept the premise that they're killing people as children before they become a problem later on, like, you have to... What did they find out about Madeleine McCann? Nah, though. What was she gonna do? They did not hesitate with McCann. They took her off the board with extreme prejudice. Fucking 2 in the back of the head, bury her at sea. Like, they sent in the SEALs for McCann. That was Bin Laden level. Like, I just want to know. Look, I get it. You're a liberal crowd. You, much like I, would have preferred Madeleine McCann to stand trial for her crimes. I agree with you. It's just not the political reality we live in, unfortunately. My mum died in July 2022. The last words that she ever said to me were actually, "I love you, don't cry." And I did think to myself, what an unreasonable request. Really quite a difficult woman going out with a wry statement as she lived. A few months before she died, I was at home with my mum, and someone phoned up, right, like a telemarketing person, and my mum picked up the phone, and I heard this person go, "Hello, I'd like to speak to Keith Edwards, please." And my mum said, "Wouldn't we all?" And put the phone down. And I thought, you know what, she may not have started that phone conversation, but she absolutely fucking finished it. Thank you very much, I'm Milo Edwards. Cheers, good night!